All right, Braves fans, let's get rolling. I'm George McNair, and this is State of the Braves. Well, guys, in our last episode, we talked about the Braves infield, and man, the Braves infield is incredibly talented. We broke it all down from Austin Riley and Matt Olson to Ozzie Albies and Orlando Arcia, and our two catchers. And it's almost kind of endless how talented this Braves team is, and we see that again with the Braves outfield. So, in this episode, we're going to turn our attention to the Braves outfield and just how young, how incredibly talented they are. Of course, it starts with Ronald Acuna. We're going to dive into him and just how good he could potentially be in 2024 as he backs up an MVP year. We're obviously going to look at Michael Harris, who I think is due for an even greater breakout season. And we'll talk about Jarred Kelenic and all the potential that exists with him. We'll also include the DH in this episode. So we'll talk a little bit about Marcel Ozuna at the end of the episode. He's kind of in his own category in a way, being the DH. So we'll fit him in as well. So let's get started with some Braves news, just how the Braves are looking during spring training, some of my thoughts thus far, especially over the last few days. Now, of course, this news starts with Ronald Acuna going down with this sore knee. I'm sure a lot of you guys are super nervous about what this might be. I am too, quite honestly, but I have some optimism that it's not going to be too serious, especially with some of the news we've recently gotten. I'm coming to you guys recording this episode around 5 o'clock on Monday evening. So just kind of giving you a little perspective of when I'm coming to you and what news has broken so far. Of course, if you watch this episode after that and bigger news has come down, well, I obviously can't help that, but you can fill in the blanks from there. But let's go. I'll get back to Acuna in just a second, but some other things that are really positive for the Braves so far in camp. Number one, Chris Sale is looking really good. He's made 2 appearances so far, and quite honestly, his stuff I think he looks ready to go right now. He struck out 5 in 2 2/3 innings in his most recent outing. And yeah, I mean, he wasn't quite as sharp maybe in this one. He walked a couple guys, but the stuff is just off the charts as it really always has been. And, as soon as the Braves made the addition of Sale, we talked about that is when he is on the mound, he's dominant. And I really don't expect anything less from him. And I think he's coming into camp super motivated, jazzed up to be a part of a really good Braves team. It has to feel like a career renaissance, or at least a chance at it. So far, he's looked really good. Hurston Waldrop also made his spring debut just a day or two ago, and he looked really good as well. 2 scoreless innings. He did allow a couple walks, but no hits, and he's striking guys out. Showed that really good split finger pitch. And, I think the Braves have to be at least open-minded about what Hurston Waldrop is going to do this year. And then also Ronaldo Lopez, as the Braves are starting to stretch him out. He made his first appearance this week, 3 innings scoreless, and looked really good as well. I'm starting to really buy into the idea that the Braves will either let Ronaldo Lopez be the 5th starter, or maybe they start with 6 guys, let him and Bryce Elder pitch at the back end of the pitching staff, and maybe save a 40-year-old Charlie Morton's arm a little bit, maybe save Chris Sale a little bit, reduce their innings early on, and go with a 6-man rotation. So obviously that remains to be seen, but some really good things so far from the pitching side of things. We just continue to hope for health. So, of course, we addressed that elephant in the room of these reports with Ronald Acuna. He's been shut down from spring training activities due to a sore knee. They believe it is some kind of issue with his meniscus. The initial MRI on this did not show any structural damage. So Ronald is traveling to California today to see the doctor that performed his surgery on his ACL to examine his knee in person. And we are waiting word on that. Now, meanwhile, Alex Anthopoulos spoke on this, and he says he is fully confident that Ronald should be ready for opening day, that he's not overly worried about it. So, that's good. And I don't know if he would say that just to say it, I think he's probably being honest with what he thinks is going on with Ronald's knee. I don't think it's totally abnormal for a guy, 1 year off of, or maybe a little more than a year off of ACL surgery, to experience some, occasional issues, maybe even need a cleanup of the knee. Everything I've seen, unless it's, the really bad situation, which it didn't appear to be when I saw, this happened in a rundown between second and third. And it's not like Ronald came off the field limping or grabbing his knee. So typically with a knee injury, you're going to see something like that if it's major. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, and any number of things could be the case, but I doubt that it's going to be something where Ronald is out for months. So, I'm going to go with Anthopoulos and his confidence right now. So for the time being, I'm being cautiously optimistic that Ronald will be fully healthy to start the regular season. I'll refrain from any worst case scenarios until I hear otherwise. If we hear otherwise, we'll obviously address it, talk about it, and I'll come to you guys with a special episode addressing something like that. All right, so let's go into the 2023 performance of this outfield as a group. Michael Harris, Ronald Acuna, and of course, last year it was a platoon of Eddie Rosario and Kevin Pillar. That group was good for a combined 13.8 WAR, and of course, Acuna did a lot, and really most, of that damage. He had over an 8 WAR season last year. The group combined for 89 home runs. Kind of funny that Rosario was the only Gold Glove finalist of the group. Ronald Acuna, of course, won the National League MVP. So, as a group, Ronald was the clear best player across all of baseball. Michael Harris had a great final 4 months of the season, and Rosario had 2 hot months and 4 not so great months. And as we stand right now, Rosario will not be back with the team. Kevin Pillar has signed with the White Sox, and the Braves have added Jarred Kelenic. So we're going to add him to the mix here and just talk about what the Braves might be able to do in 2024 from the outfield. So let's start with Michael Harris. In 2023, he hit .293 with a .331 on base and a .477 slugging percentage. He hit 18 home runs, and this was good for a 4.0 wins above replacement. And it is just worth noting, every time you talk about Michael Harris in his 2023, you talk about this struggle that he had basically into June. And then he was just a totally different player after he got healthy and he got out of that slump and his confidence turned around. And, he was really the player that we know he can be. And it just makes you really excited about the future for Michael Harris. So just as a reminder, June 1st of 2023, Harris was hitting 174 with a .260 on base percentage and a .266 slugging percentage. He only had 2 home runs, and this was through 123 plate appearances. And of course, part of this slow start was about a week into the season. He strained his back, and I can only imagine how that affects your swing and what else you can do and what you feel like you can do when you're swinging a bat. So after June 1st, Harris hit 326 with a .352 on base percentage and a .535 slugging percentage. He hit 16 home runs and a whole bunch of other extra base hits and 416 plate appearances. So totally different player after June 1st. So yeah, Harris had missed 24 total games with that lower back strain, and it's hard to say how big it was, how much it was bothering him even after he came back from the injured list. But clearly he was a different player after June 1st. Harris's success in the second half of last season is a great sign because, a lot of guys struggle in that second year as the league starts adjusting to him. And the fact that he was able to adjust back to what pitchers were doing to him last year and have great results is a really, really good sign that Michael Harris is a star in the making. So Harris's 2024 Fangraphs projections, let's get into that. Fangraphs projects him to be at .284 with a .330 on base and a .477 slugging percentage with 24 home runs and a 4.3 wins above replacement. So interesting. I mean, basically, Fangraph sees Harris improving a bit in most areas, and I think particularly it looks like in the home run area, and then also defensively, I think they see him not bouncing back. He had a good defensive year from the metrics, but I think his rookie season was a little better with the metrics, so it sees him improving in that area next year, which I guess makes sense. Again, with young players, Fangraphs doesn't have a lot to go on. It's building projections based off of past performance, so this does make some sense. I'll get into my projections here in a little bit. Now let's talk about Harris's clubhouse contribution. Michael Harris, the second, of course, is a fun-loving guy. He plays loose. He plays with a lot of confidence. He's athletic. I mean, he has a reason to be very confident. I think his combination of just youthful joy for the game, I think it kind of matches Ronald Acuna and Ozzie Albies really well. He's got a flair and a work ethic that just fits in really well with his clubhouse. And I think it matches for him to have just a ton of success moving forward. That cool confidence that maybe edges on cocky, but I think it's more just a confident player who knows he's good, he knows he's talented, and is willing to work hard for what he gets. And that's a really good combination. So with continued success, I think this will probably just build and build, and I think he'll become more of a leader in the clubhouse too as he gets older. He, of course, is still very young. So my projections for Michael, I think Harris, I believe in his second half last year. That's the real Michael Harris. I think the league will continue to try to make adjustments, but Harris's right center field approach to hitting, I think, really helps him to avoid prolonged slumps. I think that early slump last year was an aberration connected to that back injury. I think Michael's ability to hit lefties consistently is really impressive. And of course, as a left-handed hitter, it allows him to just stay in games and continue to be successful no matter who he is facing. I also think he's going to start tapping into his power a little bit more. He has tremendous power. I mean, he can hit 450-foot bombs. He just doesn't consistently hit home runs. He'll go 2 or 3 weeks without hitting one. And I think as he gets older, he's going to be able to tap into that power a little more consistently. And I think that probably starts this season. He's also moving up in the lineup this season. I think that is a challenge for him because the benefit of last year is he was able to hit at least half of the games in the ninth hole, in the 9 hole, excuse me. And, with Acuna hitting behind you, you get to see a lot more fastballs. So he probably will have to adjust to hitting more off-speed pitches a little more consistently. And so this could be the biggest challenge for his season this year. So I do think I could see his average being slightly down from last year. I'm not seeing a big dip, but I do think that will be the biggest adjustment for him. So I see Harris hitting 290 with a 340 on-base percentage and a 490 slugging percentage. And I'm saying that he's hitting 30 home runs this year. That I think his power numbers do show up in a much bigger way this year. And look, I also think this could be a year where he makes the All-Star team and he wins a Gold Glove. And with these numbers in center field, I'm saying he's a top 20 MVP candidate. So I'm seeing a lot of big things for Harris. I was projecting these things for him last offseason, and I just really think that back injury early on derailed, what could have been an all-star year for him last year. So I'm seeing it this year. I'm a huge fan of Michael Harris, and I think it's going to happen for him. All right, let's move on to Ronald Acuna Jr. His 2023 performance was historic. We all know that is true, but just as a reminder, the numbers, he hit 337 with a 416 on base percentage and a 596 slugging percentage. He hit 41 home runs, 73 stolen bases, by the way, and this was good for an 8.3 WAR season. Ronald's season was remarkable. Historic is almost, it's not enough. What else can we say about it? And can we really expect for Ronald to repeat that kind of a season? And honestly, I think, yeah, we can. I mean, we watch him and it's like, this is who he is. It's not like he was playing over his head or that he even got lucky last year. I mean, the numbers say he got unlucky with his average and that sort of thing. So when you watched him, you just realize, yeah, this is a special generational talent, and this is who we can expect him to be for years to come. And the most surprising part to his season wasn't that he hit 40 home runs or stole 70 bases. I think you could project those things based off of his talent. It was really how he cut his strikeout rate in half from a career 24% strikeout rate to 12. And when he did that, he made hitting in the 330s possible. Before last season, Ronald was, maybe a 300 hitter, maybe a little below that with a lot of power. And he just turned himself into one of the best all-around hitters in baseball on top of his speed and all of his just dynamic power and, just ability to hit the ball harder than anybody in baseball, all that stuff. So, if he continues to do that, low strikeout rates and putting the bat on the ball and be able to hit it harder than anybody else, he's going to continue to be the best position player in baseball. And that's basically what I project him to be. Now, Fangraphs does project him to be a little down from last year, but I'm going to give Fangraphs some grace on this because it's hard for a projection model to project somebody to continue to hit 337. But to their credit, they do still have him hitting 311 with a 404 on base percentage and a 583 slugging percentage, 40 home runs still, and 50 stolen bases, and a 7.4 wins above replacement. So, yeah, even though that's down from what he did last year, that is an insane projection. And it just speaks to Ronald's amazing ability that he would be projected for that level of performance. So it feels right in terms of what Fangraphs would project. Yet 311 and 40 home runs for Ronald does still seem pretty low, does it not? So Ronald's clubhouse contribution, again, I think Ronald's joy for the game, him and Ozzy and Michael Harris, and I guess I'll throw RC in there. They just love playing baseball. They love being together. And Ronald clearly loves the game and appreciates his teammates, appreciates, I think, being on the field every day. And I think since that ACL injury, it's one of those, I don't want to get too cheesy here, but it's one of those examples of when something really bad happens to a player and they have to overcome some things. It really gives them good perspective. And that knee injury may, in the end, be one of the best things that ever happened to Ronald. I mean, of course, that means he's got to stay healthy from this point on. And we know this meniscus thing could be a problem. But just in terms of his mental take and emotional take on the game, I think it's way better. And it's probably caused him to mature quicker as a player. And I just think last season is a great example of how it focused him. And I'm not sure last season happens as dominant as it was without that knee injury happening and him coming back from that. So yeah, I think Ronald brings so much more to the clubhouse now. I think he's a more mature version of himself. I think he's more focused. And now I think the only thing left for him is to dominate the playoffs. I think that's really the only thing Ronald hasn't done yet. And I think that's coming, guys. So my projections for Ronald, with his knee soreness, I am putting a little bit of that into the mix. So I did adjust my my projection down very slightly. Okay, I'm not going crazy with this, but I'm just saying, okay, what if he has to miss spring training or he misses maybe just a couple games early on of the season? How might that impact his year? So with all that in mind, I'm still thinking that Ronald hit the ball on the ground more last year than he typically will. He got unlucky on some hard hit balls in play. So I think all of that's going to turn around. I think he's going to put the ball in the air a little bit more consistently this year. And I think what that means is he's going to become the first. He's going to do another historic season. I think Ronald's going to be the first 50-50 player in the history of baseball. So I have Ronald at 315 average with a 410 on base and a 600 slugging percentage. with 50 home runs and 55 stolen bases. I think his stolen bases go down slightly because of this knee soreness. I think that's where you probably have the biggest downturn. He's just probably going to be a little safer on the base paths. It doesn't mean he won't run. He just might have to pick his spots, especially early in the season, a little bit more. I also think his defense is going to improve a little bit from last year. At least by the metrics, it wasn't quite as good. And I think he's going to start getting more comfortable out there. So I have him still for an 8-win season and back-to-back MVPs. I mean, who's not winning the MVP with a 50-50 season? So I think that is going to continue for him. And man, that would be really sweet for back-to-back MVP for performances. All right, let's move on to Jarred Kelenic, his 2023 with the Seattle Mariners. Of course, we haven't seen much of him being over in the Western American League. He hit .253 with a .327 on base and a .419 slugging percentage. This was good for 11 home runs and a 1.3 wins above replacement. He only played in 105 games. You guys might know that this was due to missing significant time after he kicked a water cooler in frustration, broke his foot, and was just kind of done for pretty much the remainder of the season. So it cut into, of course, what he could have done on the field. Now, his 2024 Fangraphs projections, they have him at .242 with a .318 slugging percentage and a .422, a .318 on base percentage and a .422 slugging percentage. That's good for 18 home runs, and they have him just with a meager 1.0 wins above replacement. So, look, Fangraphs might not be a huge believer in Kelenic, but remember, this is just a straight projection model, and Kelenic has never really proven it in the big leagues yet, right? His early career struggles weigh down his projections, but it does seem really low. But he's got to prove himself on the field, right? So we just have to keep that in mind. Now, his clubhouse contributions, I'm sure he's coming in as the new guy, and he doesn't want to rock the boat. I think he probably just wants to have a look. He needs a good year, right? He has to cement himself as a quality major league player. He hasn't done that yet, so I'm sure he's going to be very focused, listening to all the veterans who have had a lot of success and just soaking in like a sponge all that stuff. So early reports are really positive on Kelenic and that he's done this, that he is fitting in, that he's working hard, he's very dedicated to his daily routine, that he cares a lot about team success. He's already connected a good bit in the offseason with Matt Olson, which I think is a great choice for him. He doesn't need to be a leader on this team. Just bring some fire, relax, and let the performance and the results come. And I hope they do. I think once Kelenic experiences a little success on the field in the regular season, I think things are going to go really well for him in 2024. So I do expect him to outdo his 2023 performance for a few reasons. Kelenic and Snitker has already said this, that they plan to hit Kelenic ninth. He'll see a lot more strikes and a lot more fastballs hitting in front of Ronald. So Ronald protecting him that's about as good of a place as you could hit in all of baseball. He's going to have a lot less pressure on him. A lot of times he had to hit fourth or fifth in that Mariners lineup, and just hitting ninth and being surrounded by so many all-stars with the Braves, it should let him just chill out a little bit. He can have some bad games, and the Braves can still score 8 runs or 10 runs and win the game. And also just knowing that he's going to be in there every day. The Braves have already told him, you're playing every day, lefty or righty, doesn't matter who's out there. Unless you have an injury, you're going to be out there. And so he's going to be able to feel confident to play through some struggles. With baseball, you're going to have some downturns. You're going to have 1 or 2 bad weeks where you got to work through it, especially as a young player. And he's going to have that opportunity. Again, he only played in 105 games last year and is only projected by Fangraphs to play in 120. And it's just almost certain, barring an injury, that he'll play in more than that with the Braves. Fangraphs has him at 120 games and still hitting 18 home runs. That's still a 23 home run pace over a full course of games. So, 23 home runs, that's about Eddie Rosario from last year. And I think Kelenic is going to be better than that. But even if he is just Eddie Rosario of last year, we know the Braves won 104 games with that situation. Uh, Now, for those worried about Kelenic's slow start, he has had a slow start to spring thus far. I expect that he's making some swing adjustments. I think the Braves probably got him in there and made some tweaks. I know that they don't tend to make tweaks immediately, so maybe they've just started to do that. But regardless, it's early, and I'm sure there are some nerves and all those things. Remember, Matt Olson didn't come in just gangbusters early in his Braves career, so every guy has to experience that a little differently and work through the newness of the expectations of a new play. So hopefully that's what he's doing now. Again, once he experiences some success, I think Kelenic's going to be really good for the Braves. I think he's going to take off, and he's a very talented guy. So you just hope it happens for him. So my projection for Kelenic is 260 with a 330 on base and a 460 slugging percentage. I'm saying 26 home runs. And even though WAR is hard to project, hey, why not 2.5 WAR? I think that is better than an average starter, and it would be a great kind of stepping stone type of season for Kelenic in left field. Now, just really briefly, in terms of the Braves outfield, their fourth outfielders, I'm not too worried about that. It should be understood that the Braves don't need a platoon starter like a Kevin Pillar, Eddie Rosario situation last year. They basically have their standard 3 dudes. They really don't need a fill-in guy for an occasional. Sorry, they really only need a fill-in guy for an occasional rest day start. They don't need a platoon guy who's going to play 30 or 40% of games. If they need a long-term option due to injury, whether it's Ronald's, situation now or an injury in the future, I think they would just make a move at that point, whether it's a trade that they would have to make if it's midseason or if it's in spring training. There's still some free agents available out there. But in season, it's just hard to sign a legitimate free agent type of guy like an Adam Duvall. If that guy's in your thoughts, it's hard to sign that guy when there's just no window for realistic playing time. So let's go into, just mention a couple of these fourth outfielders that are with the Braves right now. Forrest Wall, speedy outfielder. He can play all positions in the outfield. He's made some swing adjustments in spring training and so far has looked really great in camp. I like Forrest Wall. He's got blazing speed on the bases. He's a stolen base artist, and I think that makes him a very obvious postseason roster player for the Braves. I'm not sure he's going to serve as the fourth outfielder. If the Braves want to give him consistent playing time at AAA and then bring him up as needed, I think that makes some sense. Jordan Luplow, they signed to for the second straight year. They signed him, bring him into camp with a minor league deal. He's the most veteran outfielder of the group that they brought in. And I think he might be the most likely to start the year as their fourth outfielder. He has some pop, and he's, he has some decent yet uneven performance at the big league level. He hasn't been very good for the last couple years, but he hits decently against lefties. And, for a guy that's going to play very rarely, Luplow might be the best option. JP Martinez is another guy the Braves brought in from Texas over the offseason. He might be the best internal option if someone were to go down with an injury and you just need to fill in for 2 or 3 weeks. And in the meantime, they'll probably store him at AAA and just let him play because he does have options left over. Other than that, I think, like I said, it's possible there might be a late spring training signing for a free agent if a guy like a Duvall got desperate and just wanted to sign an MLB deal if no one else was giving him a deal, even though he knows he might not get a chance to play much, come in with the Braves. He's comfortable here, make a couple $1 million and be on the bench. And then if someone does get injured, he can move in and start some games. So a guy like that would also provide a little bit of an insurance if Kelenic really, really struggled, and you started platooning Kelenic a little bit more. I think a Duvall makes some sense, but I don't see that happening unless it's just really late into spring training. Now, in terms of the Braves outfield, how does the Braves outfield stand up against the rest of the league? Well, honestly, guys, I think this is the best outfield in baseball. I think there's maybe one or two outfields that you could argue are better. I'm going to stand with the Braves with Acuna, Harrison, Kelenic. Fangraphs WAR combination of the three has a 13.0 WAR projection for the Braves outfield. But I think well, and by the way, the Yankees have a higher WAR. They're the only team in baseball with a higher projected WAR than the Braves. So I'll get into that in a second. But I think both Harris and Kelenic will exceed expectations this year from what Fangraphs is projecting. And I think Kelenic potentially by a wide margin. And as long as Acuna is healthy, obviously that's a huge part of that. I think they are the best young outfield in baseball. Harris is the second best center fielder in all of baseball behind Julio Rodriguez, and Acuna is the best right fielder. So it's not hard to imagine if Kelenic can just be average with those other two, this is an elite outfield. Now, the Yankees, like I said, they're projected at a 14.8 WAR by Fangraphs, and you kind of have to combine four guys for their outfield: Verdugo, Judge, Soto, and Grisham. And, you know, with Judge, of course, it's all about health and can he stay on the field? He wasn't really able to do that much last year. But on paper, with Judge and Soto, they might be the best in baseball. I'm just not sure that they can stay healthy enough, but we'll see, obviously. The Astros are probably number 3, and you kind of have to do a combination of four guys there, too. Chas McCormick, Jordan Alvarez, Jake Myers, and Kyle Tucker. McCormick and Myers, they're more about defense, but Alvarez and Tucker are legitimate offensive stars. So they're really great. I think a couple of young outfields that are also really good. The D-backs with Gurriel and Alex Thomas, and of course Corbin Carroll. The Rangers with Evan Carter, Adolis Garcia, Lodi Tavares, and Wyatt Langford, who is a really talented rookie, who, you know, I think they might have the highest ceiling of some of these teams. The Cubs with Happ and Bellinger and Seiya Suzuki are pretty solid as well. But I think the Braves still, you know, Ronald is the obvious. He just weighs down. I mean, he's by far the best player in baseball. And you think some of these teams are projected with 3 starters in the outfield to be about an 8 WAR outfield, and Ronald can almost do that by himself. So it's just crazy how good Ronald is. So now let's recap my group projection. So remember, the Braves outfield last year had 89 home runs and finished with a 13.0 WAR for the season. Sorry, 13.8 WAR for the season. I'm projecting that the Braves are going to have a 106 home runs as a group. That's a big bump, but a lot of that has to do with the addition of Kelenic and my projection that Harris is going to hit 30 home runs. But then again, I'm also projecting Ronald's going to hit 50. So a lot of home runs from the outfield. And honestly, with my projection of what I think the infield's going to do, I think the Braves very likely could break the home run record that they tied just last year with 307 team home runs. I also think, like I said, I think that Acuna is going to win another MVP. He, of course, would be an all-star and win a Silver Slugger. And I think Michael Harris is going to win a Gold Glove, be an all-star, and be a top 20 MVP candidate in his own right. All right, so guys, let's go ahead and close out this episode just briefly talking about Marcel Ozuna in the DH position. The Braves are the rare team with a dedicated DH. There aren't many teams across baseball that have that anymore, you know, like the classic David Ortiz dedicated DH. But Marcel Ozuna is definitely that. And they are leaning on Ozuna for production. And let's not forget his very strange 2023, where he was about the worst player in baseball for a month, and then he just turned it on for the next 5. His overall 2023, he hit 274 with a 346 on base percentage and a robust 558 slugging percentage, 40 home runs, and this was good for a 3.3 WAR season. The truth is, Marcel Ozuna is a total wild card. He had 2 terrible seasons, and then after that horrendous start to 2023, he was one of the best hitters in baseball for 5 months. So what is he going to do? I don't know that Fangraphs knows how to project him, and it's hard to know. So they project him at to hit a 254 average with 325 on base and a 475 slugging percentage with 31 home runs and a 1.5 WAR season. So obviously a step back from what he did last year, and it's understandable that Fangraphs basically doesn't buy Marcel's 2023 season due to his track record. His track record's all over the place. The thing about this projection I don't buy is Marcel Ozuna doesn't really have ho-hum type of years. He's either really good or really bad, and that's a little terrifying to think about. But you just hope that he figured something out last season and he's able to bring it into this season. Now, let's talk about his contribution to the clubhouse. Of course, Marcel has had some off the field issues. He seems to have overcome those. We really hope that he has. But in terms of his clubhouse contribution, he's really turned out to be a great teammate. I think he's beloved in that clubhouse. Multiple players have lauded him for his ability to encourage them through tough slumps, including Michael Harris, and that he's provided them with insight on their swings. Matt Olson has said that. So hopefully he remains as good of a teammate in the clubhouse as he has been recently. So my projection of Marcel Ozuna is that he's going to hit 275 with a 335 on base and a 540 slugging percentage. This would be slightly down from what he did last year, but basically that he's still maintaining a better than typical performance, that he's kind of figured something out offensively. And, we'll obviously have to wait and see on that. But again, I think Marcel Ozuna, he's either going to be really good or he's going to be really bad, and there's not a lot of in between. So will he crater or will he be the guy that he was last year? I don't think there's much opportunity for him to just be so-so. All right, guys. Well, look, ultimately, the Braves are going to hit a lot of home runs. They're going to be really talented in the outfield. They're going to be talented at basically every position on the field, and that is just so exciting as a Braves fan to know that there's 9 guys that could go. Any of them could go deep at any moment, and it's just an exciting team to watch. So, guys, next time I'm going to come back with my my analysis of the Braves pitching staff. And then we're going to go into some other projections for the team as we're getting closer and closer to the regular season. So, guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of State of the Braves, and I'll talk to you soon.